So, Vogue Arabia sparked anger with cover of featuring a Saudi princess while women activists remain in jail. So this is a Saudi princess. She's not covered up like the harlot she is. Why can I see her face? That is surprisingly attractive, actually. That's despicable. I think the Prophet Muhammad would have a fucking conniption fit. Cover yourself, you prostitute. Where is your man as well? What are you? Are you out in the desert driving a car unescorted? So Vogue Arabia has been criticised for its June cover featuring a Saudi princess to celebrate the trailblazing women of Saudi Arabia, which there are, and they're arrested. They've been arrested, and they may well get lashed. She's not one of them. She's part of the royal family, just so you know. The magazine's cover, unveiled on social media platforms on Wednesday, features Princess Haifa bint Abdullah Al Saud, the daughter of the late King Abdullah, sitting in a vintage Mercedes convertible along with the caption, "Driving Force." This is because they're due to I don't think they've actually... they haven't done it yet, but they're due to lift the long-standing driving ban for women on June 24th, which is nice. Maybe women can go out of their houses without a male escort next. Isn't that going to be progressive? But a dozen or so women's rights activists have just been arrested on charges of encroaching on religious and national constraints. Well, that's relatively easy to do for a woman in Saudi Arabia, isn't it? These Saudi princesses have never done anything for women's rights in their country. Well, why would they need to? They're incredibly privileged. Privileged people don't need to fight people's rights. Privileged people need to complain that they're triggered. Now they are cover girls portraying strong women talking about the right to drive, and real activists are being questioned and jailed, one Twitter user wrote. What a fucked up world. These Saudi women aren't your liberated desert princesses. They've clearly only been permitted to be on the cover of Vogue to make Saudi more palatable to the West to encourage foreign money. You know, it's interesting, isn't it, that I was watching Donald Trump trash-talking Iran, and it occurred to me that really all of this is about a conflict of values, because I think that the Saudis know it as well, which I think one of the pushes for them to liberalise, which they have been doing recently, obviously. It's interesting how Saudi Arabia is kind of following the progressive trend. So a bunch of them were arrested on the 18th of May. 2 or 3 have thought to have been released since, but details are thin on the ground. Several of the details... Oh yeah, but it's a totalitarian country with secret police, by the way. But women will be driving soon, so everything's fucking hunky-dory. They don't have the right to vote, though, but, I mean, if you're worried about it, nobody has the right to vote because it's not a democracy. Several of the detainees have not been allowed contact with their lawyers or family, totalitarian, and their whereabouts are unknown. The crackdown has been condemned by human rights groups as a sign that the new Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's sweeping social and economic reforms may not be as wide-ranging as promised. Listen, right, when the British introduced the Saudi king to the concept of the car and the aeroplane, his people were in revolt. He had to fight a war against his own army in order to modernize the country and use guns. Okay? The term conservative has a different meaning for Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world. Rather than celebrating Saudi women by championing brave women's rights activists like the person named, who played a crucial role in campaigning for women's basic right to drive, the Vogue Arabia issue instead contributes to the whitewashing of the ongoing human rights violations in Saudi Arabia and the isolation of their brave human rights activists. Yes, of course. I mean, you understand that a Saudi princess is part of the power structure. And I actually totally support the women's rights activists who are trying to liberalize Saudi Arabia. I mean, I would hate to be a woman in a Muslim country. It would probably be amazing being a woman in a Western country, but being a woman in a Muslim country is probably hell on earth. I mean, there are women in Iran right now posting videos of themselves burning the Quran and their hijabs to Twitter, saying, "This book has made my life a misery. This is an instrument of oppression." And then you've got Americans promoting American women wearing the hijab in solidarity to Muslim women to show that that they won't be discriminated against. It's like, okay, it's easy to do that sort of thing when you have the freedom to take it off when you want, isn't it? But Princess Haifa is quoted as welcoming the ruling family's Vision 2030 reforms designed to open up Saudi Arabia to the rest of the world and diversify its economy away from a dependence on oil. Good luck. In our country, there are some conservatives who fear change. In every country, the conservatives fear change. Personally, I support these changes with great enthusiasm. because you're a woman and you'd benefit. But that's good. You should benefit. It's easy to comment on other people's societies and think that your own society is superior. Listen, when you're blunting knives, because the knife itself is the problem rather than the people doing the stabbing, we'll talk. But at the moment, I really don't see my country as being particularly superior. But the Western world must remember that each country is specific and unique. We have strengths and weaknesses, but invariably it's our culture, and it's better to try and understand it than to judge it. Yeah, but once I understand it, can I then judge it? I don't see why I have to suspend my value judgments just because I haven't, learned the secret Saudi handshake or something. I mean, I don't know why they don't just point out that Prophet Muhammad was an intersectional feminist. Why don't they just say, listen, Muslims, have you not read your Quran? Have you not gone through the Bukhari and the other hadiths? Muhammad is clearly an intersectional feminist. Which is why he decided that women were worth half of what a man was worth. Because you couldn't really be a feminist if there was no such thing as male privilege, could you? He was just putting it into law. I haven't even read this. I just saw this and saved it. It's just a blog post from muslimgirl.com. Intersectional feminism, a term that, while seasoned, isn't just now getting the time in the spotlight it needs. I think it's withering and dying in the spotlight now, hopefully. While feminism advocates for women's rights and equality between the sexes, I mean the opposite of what Muhammad did, yeah, intersectional feminism goes even deeper than that. It's the understanding of how women's overlapping identities like race, class, religion, sexual orientation and ethnicity all come together to affect the way they experience oppression and discrimination. Because there's one thing we're going to assume here, and that's that women are experiencing oppression, at least in the West. In Saudi Arabia, I think we can all agree. The most prevalent example in today's society is probably the phenomenon known as white feminism, because if you've got feminists who are not intersectional, the way to pick them out is to racialize them and call them white, because that's basically like being called Satan. If this was like a Christian version, it would be satanic feminism. That's how they would describe it. And how it sometimes leaves out women of other less privileged backgrounds, predominantly black women. I've always been frustrated by the way that Muslims use culture to make Islam look a certain way, when people who are interested in learning about Islam should truly be paying attention to the more religious aspects of Islam, and shouldn't become confused with the cultural ones that people have created themselves over the years. Wow, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because then you end up starting to sound like ISIS, saying things like, we should live the way the Prophet Muhammad lived. We should be doing things exactly the way they're said in the books. And that leads you to pushing gays off rooftops and beheading unbelievers. just saying. It's important for people to know that most of the negative things you hear about in the news that are associated with Islam are due to patriarchal legislation that stem from controversial cultural ties and not Islamic ideals. In fact, I would say that Allah's messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was an early intersectional feminist himself. Is it an intersectional feminist thing to do to marry a 6-year-old? Is it an intersectionally feminist thing to do to have sex with a 9-year-old? Is it an intersectionally feminist thing for your child bride to to scrape off the spunk that encrusts your robes from you having sex with your 9 wives? Is that intersectional? It probably is, actually. What am I talking about? It's probably really fucking feminist. Islam is the codification of patriarchy. It is the declaration that women are just worth half of what a man's worth. I mean, there is literally this valuation laid out in the Quran. A woman, it requires 2 women to testify against a man. A woman gets half of the inheritance of a man, and there are probably other things as well that I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, women are just worth half of what a man's worth. I mean, it's really intersectional. One of the most beloved quotes by Prophet Muhammad was when he was asked, "Where do you find paradise?" His reply, "Paradise lies at the feet of the mother." Oh, why a mother, though? I mean, what, is a woman not good enough without being a mother? That's patriarchal, isn't it? Kill the unbelievers wherever you find them. The stones will cry out, "Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." But where do you find paradise? Oh, at the feet of the mother. Oh, well, Muhammad, he's just brilliant. What a progressive guy. I can't believe that we don't all convert to Islam. To some, this may be controversial, presumably because, I don't know, some mothers are male. We We don't all have the perfect relationship with our mothers, but the message remains meaningful. His wife, Khadija, was the first woman to accept Islam, and it is from her that he learned most of his values. Times were different in 7th century Arabia. Prophet Muhammad revealed ideals of gender equality that were considered revolutionarily feminist in the historical context of his time. Okay, 1. No one at the time considered what Muhammad was doing to be feminist, and 2. Muhammad wasn't for equality for women. He was opposed to equality for women, which is why, and again, this is assuming Muhammad even existed and did any of the things that are credited to him, obviously. He codified it so that women were literally not the equals of men, to be the property of men. So, I mean, there are still, I can't remember see, it's so fucking archaic, I can't even remember the term, a dowry. There's still countries that give dowries, because women are fucking property in these countries. Women in Saudi Arabia literally can't leave the house without a male escort, even if that escort is their own son, a child. In what way did Muhammad bring in gender equality? You fucking delusional lunatic. He spent much of his life protesting against female infanticide that was commonplace in society, telling other fathers that having daughters was a blessing, and that if their daughters spoke well of them on the Day of Judgment, their word alone would be enough to get them into paradise. Okay, I'm sure he did, but he was a bit of a randy bastard and was kind of interested in kids. Come at me. Prove me wrong. Because you can't, can you? Because he was. So no wonder he wanted more women around. That's it. Maybe I'm going too far. Free speech. I'm constitutionally protected in this fucking country. He also argued that all dowry that was given to a girl's family before her marriage should go straight to her, not to be used by the family. Yeah, but he wasn't against the idea of a dowry, was he? He also promoted the right for all women to vote. To vote? Did he? Really? I would like to see a source on that, given how it's not like he was running a democracy, so what were they voting for? And it's not like after his death there was any democracy, so what fucking vote are you talking about? Gain inheritance regardless of their class status, but half of the inheritance of their male siblings, doesn't seem very equal. Get an education and have a political role in society. I mean, you're not giving me any sources there, but I really feel like you're overstating this. I can't but feel this is you twisting this in a way that you think satisfies your agenda. Examples of the Prophet Muhammad engaging in intersectional feminism come into play when we discuss his actions against social oppression. Even though he was a prophet, let's not take that as read either, Muhammad taught us that nothing makes one Muslim better than his or her good deeds, which helped him gain the trust of people who are subject to sexism, racism, and class-based oppression. And I'm sure that's exactly how they viewed it as well. You could literally describe everyone on Earth that way, from an intersectional lens. Everyone is subject to sexism, racism, and class-based oppression. It's called a hierarchy, an interlocking lattice of oppressions that everyone has, and they can't figure out what to do with this. In fact, the concept of the hierarchy has kind of quietly died off, because as soon as you introduce it, you realise that life's actually way more complicated than just saying men are keeping women down. And so it's like, into the trash that goes, because that ruins what we're trying to do here. But anyway, he knew he couldn't just focus on men's versus women's rights. Muhammad didn't give a shit about rights. Okay? Human rights are a Western invention. Muhammad didn't have rights. There were no rights. You have duties, responsibilities, but not rights. His society required a much deeper overhaul. Yeah, it fucking did. Muhammad knew what it felt like to be at the bottom. He was an orphan and adopted later on. The first person to hold him when he was born was a black Muslim woman. Did you think about that? Did you, the first person to hold the Prophet of Islam, the guy in his 40s, I think it was, who created Islam. He conceived of it and gave it to everyone. He wasn't held by a Muslim woman when he was born, was he? Was he? Come on, think it through. But a black Muslim woman by the name of Ayman, and she continued to be part of his life for as long as he was alive. Her influence might have impacted Muhammad's decision to elect a formerly enslaved black man named Bilal to perform the call to prayer, and later to adopt a former slave as a son. Maybe. Who fucking knows? He assisted a black man by the name of Zaid to marry an affluent Arab woman. Okay, yeah, good for him. That's really progressive. Look at the number of black people that Muhammad knew. He had black friends. To be fair, Muhammad was actually not, as far as I can tell, particularly racist. You can look at his last sermon, and he explicitly says that Arabs are no better than blacks and vice versa. That doesn't stop there being an awful lot of racism in the Arab world, obviously. While others wanted different races to remain segregated and for people to marry only within their race and class, Muhammad used interracial marriage as one way to eradicate ignorance and bigotry. Well, bravo, Muhammad. I'm always proud to see a good genetic imperialist popping up throughout history. Portland, I really enjoyed the round of applause that genetic imperialism got from the audience as well. All of this is just a brief summary of how Prophet Muhammad was not only a feminist for his time. Here we go. Let's have qualifiers on the Muhammad was the most intersectional feminist of them all. Yeah, for his time, he did marginally increase the status of women in Arab societies and then codified it so that for the next 1,400 years, while all the other women around the Arab societies were getting rights and improving their status in society, Arab women remained right at that bottom level. But, you know, it was a step up in the 7th century in Arabia. But also as an intersectional feminist who wanted to generate as much inclusivity as possible. And that totally overshadows beheading 600 Jews in a village. He may have been a mass-murdering, child-raping warlord, but he was really fucking inclusive. So, you know, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And with that, I leave you with the Prophet's final words. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. It's not Adam and Steve, which is another thing he didn't like. An Arab has no... This is from his last sermon, in fact. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, or a non-Arab has superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. Wow. That's... It's almost like white people didn't invent racism, and racism was something that existed in the Arabian Peninsula, to the point where Muhammad himself had to address it. Intersectional feminist BTFO'd. But I'll tell you what, if Muhammad was such a fucking feminist, why do Muslim women have a shame of eating during Ramadan while menstruating? I'm really curious about this. Like, how do they know? How do other people know? If women just didn't say anything, then... actually, no, maybe I'm opening a fucking horrible can of worms there, because maybe they don't just take their word for it. I don't fucking know. Muslim women on social media have been discussing the challenges around eating while having their periods during the holy month of Ramadan. Some said they have to hide away from their male relatives to avoid being stared at or having to lie about menstruating. Right? Okay. Now, I'm gonna say something that might seem prejudicial, and you might think, well, I mean, not all of them, but I'm going to pip you at the post. Every single Muslim man has a problem with women. Every single one of them. They all have a problem with women, as far as I'm concerned. From my perspective as a Western man who thinks women should be effectively left to run their own lives and men left to run their own lives, and then the negotiation between people happens on a personal level, Muslim men seem to have a real problem with women. Every time I read anything about women in the Muslim world, it's always as if the Muslim men can't control themselves, as if they're actual animals, and that should be taken into account. I mean, can you imagine being such a disgusting creeper that there's a certain time of the year, a month during the year, where you pay attention to your sister's periods? What fucking gross shit is this? I'm not joking either, right? Some people don't want to admit that this problem exists because they see it as a negative reflection on the Muslim religion, but there is a problem. Yeah, well, there are a lot of negative reflections on the Muslim religion, and this is hardly the worst of them, to be honest. It's just really gross. During Ramadan, Muslims fast between sunrise and sunset, not consuming food or drink. However, when a woman is menstruating, she cannot fast. Why? Is it because Muhammad also had a problem with women? Just like he had a problem with dogs and pigs. Despite this, some women feel that they cannot be open about their periods with male members of their family. That's because they can't. My mum used to tell me, if you're on your period, don't tell the men, only the girls know. So whenever I was drinking water and saw my father coming, I would put the glass down and walk away. I had to be like a raccoon. My mum would put food in my room and tell me to eat there quietly. Sophia, who lives in New York and is of Pakistani descent, said, when my brother caught me, I literally had the bite in my mouth and he stared at me. My brothers would try to catch me eating in order to embarrass me. Dude, right? Like, just shrug and be like, I'm literally bleeding out of an orifice between my legs. I'm going to eat some food. If you have a problem, don't be ashamed of that. That's just life. That's just what happens to women. Like, what the fuck are you meant to say? Oh no, I'm eating on my period. Well, it lasts for like 5 days. I figure you probably get hungry at some point. Anyway, I wish I had the confidence to say this is natural and my religion commands that I cannot fast because I'm not pure enough. Apparently menstruation is a shameful topic. Imagine my shock. Her mother never told her she would get periods when going through puberty. I really think menstruation is something that women should own. The taboo should be gone. There should be rules, there should be more conversations, and it's up to our generation to make that change. During Ramadan, an individual is required to abstain from foods, liquids, and intimacy from dawn till sunset. The intention to fast must be made every day before dawn. The intention, or niyah, may be made during the night before going to sleep, or it can also be made at the time of suhoor, or pre-dawn meal. Women on their period cannot fast, read the Quran, or enter a mosque. I imagine it's because they're impure, isn't it? I imagine that's not women hating at all. That sounds really intersectional to me. Not letting women read the Quran because they're on the rag. For God forbid going to a mosque. Jesus. You know, the gender-segregated mosque. I wonder if women, like Muslim communities, I wonder, because they go to a mosque every day, do their periods synchronize? So for 5 days of each month, the mosque is just empty on the women's side. It is also acceptable not to fast during Ramadan if you're pregnant, have physical and mental illness, are elderly, or experiencing severe hunger, thirst, travelling, or your life is threatened, should you not break the fast. Man, they got a lot of exceptions here. It's almost like this isn't like a God-given rule. The president of the Muslim Student Association, notice how this is all happening in the West as well. So they're not speaking out about this in Muslim countries, they're doing this in the West. Told the BBC that she wanted to help people talk about attitudes online towards menstruation and tweeted to encourage a conversation online. You know, I was thinking about this, right? I do think that there will be a kind of liberalization of the Muslim world because of Muslims in the West. And I think that probably is a good thing. So, I hate to say it, but in the long run, it might actually be a good thing that there were some Muslims in the West. Because we may end up fundamentally changing the nature of Islam by changing the nature of the Muslims here. There's such a huge stigma. Hiding your period and feeling shame perpetuates misogyny. Wow, I can't believe Muhammad would be down for some misogyny. That's weird. Isn't there something in the Quran about this? Surely there's a feminist reference or two. But that's basically it. They just want to be able to talk about menstruation. It's like, well, I'm sorry. You live in a backwards 7th century patriarchy, and unfortunately you can't.